Just go ahead and get started. Okay. Well, actually, what I just said was, well, first of all, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate, again, you guys taking, we appreciate you're taking this time on a Saturday afternoon to join us and work through this important document. So welcome. And then the second item was the open discussion about clarifying the objectives and work of this ad hoc. So again, without trying to be belabor this, what we wanted, and just sing out what your reactions are. The objective of and work of this ad hoc, of our ad hoc, is to specifically focus on the language, and if not these specific words, at least the specific concepts that we want to see contained in the language. Hi, Mariano. But that we in fact hold 79235 in the background as a basic structural document, while we actually hammer out the specific language that we want to see in 15-01. So let me know what your reactions are to that, because that's how we see it as the real way forward is focusing on the actual language of this document. So
yeah, I want to say that I am in agreement about the work that we have in front of us, and I do appreciate the commissioners responding to things that I put out, and the request that I originally made to be put on the agenda. I'm not in disagreement with moving forward, as Jose has laid out. And, he's indicated that once the ad hoc committee finishes its work in terms of 1501, that some of the larger questions that I think that have been raised, and I know I'm not the only one who raised them, about what is the nature of community policing and what do we need to do in order to move forward around it, that can come up once these 1501 issues are dealt with by the commission and brought forward to the city council. I do agree with that, but I just would want to say, I'm particularly happy that Creighton is here, because I think those larger questions will also come up in regard to how that larger resolution is dealt with and whether it ever eventually gets implemented. And I'm really weighed down heavily by the fact that what's in those resolutions, that in some sense has very little to do with the community resource officers, but has to do with the work of the civilian employees that are now being supervised by the city administrator's office and have not, I don't think, even come close to meeting what is laid out in the resolution. And that is, I think, in some ways, a larger part of whether community policing gets done. And I guess hope and that pointing out of that by this ad hoc group to the city council and the larger aspects of the city, calling on them to actually implement community policing, because that's not about what the CROs are doing. That's about whether or not the other parts of community policing actually get the resources and get pointed in the right direction to do the work that needs to be done.
yeah, I think you're absolutely on point in terms of the neighborhood services coordinators. They're just an absolutely critical part of this whole process. And one of the things that I mentioned early on before everybody came on to Wilson was that we're hoping that the group and maybe even a larger group of people that are interested in the implementation, the actual implementation of whatever this policy comes out to be, will stay together in the sense of holding the city and OPD accountable for what the policy turns out to say. So we make sure that in fact we're applying the pressure to not just OPD, but in my opinion, the city administrator's office, to make sure that the NSCs, who are again are a critical part of this whole equation, are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And in my mind, that's doing the block by block organizing that are the building blocks, if you will, of community policing at the ground floor, at the foundational level. That absolutely has to happen, in my opinion. So I don't know, any reactions on to what Wilson just spoke to? Brenda.
I know I said I wasn't going to do much talking. One of the things I was going to say as well was, one thing we could do, we may be in a position after we complete our work to present a proposal to the police commission to adopt a resolution asking the city council to make some changes or something, or some revisions. There is that possibility. It would be related to our work. It's related to 15-01. And as we're going through this process, if we see how the resolution could be improved, we might be able to draft a resolution from the commission saying, hey, city council, these are some things that you might want to consider doing. But that, I think, would be after we finish our work, and we have more credibility as well, because we can say, in doing this work, these are some things that we noticed, and these are some things that we think could change, so that in conjunction with OPD's new policy, the city could also be doing some additional things. And obviously, Creighton and others will be weighing in on that, any resolution that we might think the police commission ought to adopt. That would be directed to the city council. Okay, I'm going to be quiet.
Creighton, what's your thoughts around what Brenda said?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone again on this Saturday. Just taking a step back, just on the approach. Yeah, I'm in agreement in terms of the focus of this specific ad hoc committee squarely on 1501. I think, as we continue to develop and revise 1501, we should, as everyone has said, keep 79235 in mind, and more importantly, keep what we would like 79235 to be in mind as we revise 1501. And just to give a little background, the CPAB has already begun a process of looking at revising 79235, starting in the spring of this year. We had Berkeley law students do a ton of research in best practices across the country on community, not policing, but community empowerment and neighborhood empowerment. And I think that would be, the focus of a revised 79235. It would be a focus on two twin goals: increasing community engagement and supporting neighborhood empowerment. And those two twin goals have now been adopted as the official mission of the CPAB. So it took a while, as you know, since I became chair, to kind of coalesce around a strategy and around a mission. And in July, we voted those two twin goals: increasing community engagement and supporting neighborhood empowerment, as our official mission. And with that kind of consensus, I feel far more empowered to be able to revise, begin the revision process of 79235 with those two twin goals at the forefront. And I think, ideally, I think it would be great if we had a revision of 79235 and 1501 parallel, but I think because of just time constraints and because of just the limited capacity of each of us on this committee, it makes sense, at least from my perspective, to focus on 1501. But again, you know, with some of the research that has been done already on 79235 and some of our own opinions, make sure that 1501 is in alignment with those two twin goals, so that, you know, once we finish 1501 and start working, the CPAB working on 79235 with other community members, perhaps including some of the folks on this ad hoc committee, if there's interest, then we can kind of work on that resolution afterwards. And I just, from my perspective, I'm not sure in the revision of 79235, we need to affirmatively reach out to City Council. From the CPAB's perspective, I think we'll just work on the effort with an ad hoc group and hopefully with many of the members of this ad hoc committee as well participating. But I think once we kind of create a blueprint, then we can find a sponsor within City Council. And there's already been one council member who's indicated that that council member would be interested in sponsoring a revised 79235. And then perhaps through that approach, it could be delivered to City Council. So that's my thought process. And hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks, Creighton. At what point do you see the police commission being involved in that process you just described?
In the 79235 process? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. How would you, I'll flip it back to you. How would you think that the police commission would be best involved in that process?
You know, maybe a joint committee. In fact, maybe it might be three-way would be best. And I say that a committee of CPAB reps, police commission reps, and SSOC reps, because there's overlaps within the responsibilities of all three. And you know, without making a multi-layer, multi-dimensional thing out of it. If perhaps there were 2 or 3 or 4 reps from each of the 3 entities, and I'm just throwing this out, maybe all 3 entities could come together with a resolution they can present to the council. Particularly if you already got a sponsor, that sponsor can well be a part of the whole process to make sure that it's palatable to the council when it gets there. So I'm just throwing this out, but that's my initial thought.
Yeah, I don't want to put the cart before the horse because I think we gotta knock out 1501 first. Yeah. But I think I would be probably more inclined to have a similar structure that you've created, Jose, and the other commissioners with the police commission, and have a CPAB ad hoc with different representatives from the police commission and SSOC. The one thing that I would just note on 79235 again and emphasize is that it would be less, from my perspective, less about policing and more about engagement and empowerment. Because the minute somebody hears community policing at the neighborhood level, they don't want to be a part of that. And that doesn't mean that we're not creating relationships and partnerships with OPD, but the naming of it and the orientation of it needs to be community led and come up from the ground up. And that entire framing, I think, under a framing of empowerment and engagement, might be more palatable, and perhaps would be, it would be different than, how the current resolution is framed.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. So in terms of our agenda, let's go on to item 3. Now we're down to the nitty-gritty. Digging deeper into 15-01, what language concept should we include? Model policies and beyond. So what do folks think would be the most, we've only burned 15 minutes, fortunately. so we still have some time. What do people think would be the most efficient way of proceeding? Shall we go page by page in the policy? Shall we throw out some general concepts that we think should be included? What do people think would be the best way of beginning to hammer out this language? Let me ask this question first. In terms of the basic structure of the 15-01 document as it is right now, are people comfortable with it being workable? In other words, can people accept that as a basic framework for us to work from? Or does anybody think that there's some real serious flaws in how it's structured?
If I may, Mr. Dorado, the
Yes.
outline of this policy, it literally works perfectly cohesively with how all policies and directives currently are at the Oakland Police Department. I'm not speaking to the wording of it. You can change the wording however we want, but the actual outline in it of itself lends perfectly to the current policy format of OPD.
Okay, that certainly is important. What do other people feel about the structure of the document as it sits right now? Anybody have any problems with it, the way it's structured?
Can you enlarge it, Jose?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm running it. Hang on. I think you've got an opportunity to. Hang on. Is this good enough?
Yeah. Can
More?
you get rid of if you can get rid of the slides on the left or right, wherever?
I can't seem
Oh,
to.
but you can't do that. Okay.
Sorry.
Can you make it 150 for an old man?
Yeah, I know that's real.
How's that?
Thank you.
There's a couple of us, huh?
Yeah, really.
Um,
And old ladies too. At least one old lady.
Yeah, but you look a lot better than we do, I gotta say.
Yeah, she does.
Okay, I don't know why we're aging ourselves on a Saturday afternoon, but having looked at the model policies and something that this group worked on very early is a new definition for community policing. So I do wonder whether, as a starting point, and I'm happy to also pull up the model policies, and Lieutenant, we're really kind of going to need your guidance here. I wonder if we collect it first and then we put it into a template that works for OPD. But I feel like we're missing a couple of things that kind of also help set up. So you've got a background that I wonder whether, we can kind of replace and or attach the new definition, this committee's definition of community policing. You have 3 fundamental components of community policing here. I don't know that these are modern anymore. I don't know that anyone actually believes that community policing as a first priority reduces crime. If anything, I would flip it and do like trust and relationship. I'd also like to see what OPD is coming up with in terms of, I think I saw in your strategy, the broader OPD strategy stuff around community policing. So is there a moment here that this needs to be updated from OPD, and can we help do that? It seems very limited. I think actually there's a bit more that can be said. So just in context setting, I wonder whether there's more scope to get into this, and then you kind of go into community policing and problem solving. But I'll stop there because so definition, I wonder if there's a revisit of the objectives. Is that truly the objective of good community policing? And just context setting.
Rania, what you had just shared, I tend to agree with in terms of approach, and that's would be my instinct as well, to kind of, first think about, okay, what is, I know that, we have the opportunity to revise this policy, but we also have the opportunity to really transform it, reimagine it. That word is overused, but really, create a new model. And I think, the only way we can kind of really do that is kind of along the lines of your suggestion of, first starting off at a definition, then thinking about, what are the buckets of, or what are the objectives that we want this policy to achieve? And then, you know, maybe pulling out from the existing policy aspects that align with the objectives, and then pulling out from best practices that exist in the, I think you provided Seattle, Chicago, San Francisco, any best practices that might fill it within those objectives, and then also any additional ideas that we might have. And then from there, maybe we can actually draft the language that that would fulfill those objectives. But I worry that if we just kind of start going into the revision of language, I don't know what the direction, I personally don't know what the direction is of what we're trying to do.
Okay. So just in summary, Creighton, what you're talking about is looking to craft a definition of what community policing is about, looking at other cities' definitions.
Well, I think it would be, yes, kind of starting off like high level and a little slow in the sense that, okay, what is the definition? What is community-oriented policing, community policing in Oakland to us? What is the definition of that? And then once we settle on a definition, what are the objectives that will fulfill that definition? And I think some of those objectives are included. There are objectives that are included on the website, but it would be nice to have, you know, however many objectives guiding our revisions constantly that we can refer to and say, okay, does this revision align with objective A or B or C? So it's a clear connection, and that we're laser focused on what's guiding and what's guiding our revisions, if that makes sense.
Okay. How do people feel about that? Focusing on a definition with objectives that guide the further crafting of the specific, if I'm saying it correctly, the specific language that we want to see included. So what do
Commissioner
people-
Dorado, Mariano's hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mariano.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, definitions and how we envision community policing as an ad hoc should definitely drive the policy. But I think that more fundamentally, I would like to, as I, go from, every 2 weeks to every 2 weeks, I'm really beginning to realize that this is ultimately going to be an OPD policy. Just going through the hands of the ad hoc and going through the police commission. So what I really would like to set is some guidelines and some agreements that, particularly with the involvement of OPD and Lieutenant Fable, that what we come up with, that we all buy into it, and then when it gets to the commission and then ultimately to the OPD, who has to turn it into a general order, I believe, that is a document that was agreed by this entire group, including the OPD, who's being right now represented by Lieutenant Fable. So some guidelines, some agreements, if we make some initial ones, because I don't want us to come up with a fantastic piece of work document, and then it starts falling apart because there's no collective buy-in at the end. I don't know if that's clear, but I just want to make sure that we all collectively go into this with a buy-in. Thank you.
Okay. Any other reactions to the 2 points? One being that we would work on a definition of what community policing means to us, and include in that definition objectives that would guide the development of the specific language we want to see included. And secondly, Mariano's point about that there be a buy-in by the group moving, if I'm understanding him correctly, moving forward, so that the end product will reflect something that we all can sign our names to, I suppose, or certainly support. So reactions to either one of those points.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with the strategy at all, but when I look at those first principles to reduce crime, I don't think the police department reduces crime. I don't think there's any way the police department, the CRO officers, or any of the other officers in the Oakland Police Department reduce crime. So if we're talking about 1501,
Yeah, not right now. I gotta be in this.
when we're talking about
Meeting, yeah.
1501,
Alright.
as what the commission can do in working with the Oakland Police Department, I think we got to take out of there reducing crime. That is only can be done by the department in conjunction with the other resolution legislation separate from 1501. So if we can rewrite that in conjunction with these other aspects of what we understand community policing to be, then that begins to make some sense for me. But to put it into 1501, that we expect the Oakland Police Department to reduce crime, I don't see it, because I don't think that can happen.
Okay, thank you, Wilson. Other responses?
Hey, Mr. Dorado, so just with regard to the second statement regarding the buy-in. So I will say I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for allowing me to be on this ad hoc committee. I am truly grateful to have a voice in the matter. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that there wouldn't be buy-in, but I just need the ad hoc to know that I'm here of an opinion base only. We have our policy and publication unit would of course have to review it. And then ultimately it would have to be signed off by ranks much more important than myself to include the chief of police. So please guys, use me as a tool, as an opinion. You don't have to agree with me. And certainly even some things the department may not agree with me on. But, I support the discussion. But at the end of the day, it would have to ultimately be reviewed by our policy and publication unit.
Yeah, that follows. Thanks. I appreciate that clarification. Go ahead, Craig.
Jose, can I just, so that's the kind of input and transparency, Lieutenant Fable, that I was actually requesting and hoping that you would provide. Because, at the end of the day, we don't want, having to say, well, Lieutenant Fable supported this policy and now, there's no advocacy for it on his part. So if you could, just continue that transparency and tell us all along, well, listen, I think this will fly. And I don't think this will not fly because of these obstacles. And then we can figure out how to make it fly. So that's exactly what I was requesting. So thank you.
No, absolutely. And I will certainly be an advocate on everyone's behalf here. If the policy and publication unit requires clarity as to how it came up with a particular decision, I'm happy to disseminate the debate and explain to them in detail what was discussed and how they came to such conclusions.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Creighton, did you have something?
You're muted.
Classic. Thank you, Rania, very much. So I just had a quick question. So I may have had a misunderstanding of, the authority of the police commission, but my understanding was that it had the authority to actually promulgate policy and then have it, then the policy would be submitted to city council for review. And then city council, assuming that it would review, would then pass it. And then it would go to, then does it go to to OPD? And then is that policy and planning committee the last step, or it would be helpful for me to understand, the full authority of the police commission and whether or not, it would just be helpful for me to understand the full process.
Yeah, the police commission can reject OPD policy proposals, can come up with its own policies as it has, use of force, probation and parole searches, and any number of policies that we've come up with. But ultimately, whatever it is that we come out with as in terms of a policy has to be approved by city council. And obviously they have the authority to modify it in whatever way they think is necessary. Our authority is that we can come up with policy and we can reject policy. So that'll be the process in whatever product this ad hoc comes out with. It will then go to the commission, who will then do its review and modify it accordingly. And then it'll go from there to the council. Now, in terms of OPD, it's pretty much a done deal once the council passes it. I would think that OPD would put it in their language. And I'm assuming that's what Lieutenant Febble is talking about, but the essence of it will be what the council has laid out as policy. So whatever changes they would make to fit it into their format would be of a very minor nature, I would think. And Lieutenant, correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, this is one that I would have to defer to our counterpart, Lieutenant Joe Turner, who's very familiar with the intricacies of the flow. And I think that's what Craig was referring to, is what exactly is the flow? I'm actually not 100% sure what the flow is either. So I think that's a great discussion that we should table and hopefully get an answer for next meeting.
Okay.
I think I know, but also Mike's hand is up.
Oh, thank you, Rania. I've been working with the folks here in Vallejo to create a police commission. And so I've been using Oakland as the example, and I've been going over the language of the ordinance and the amendments and making presentations to a whole bunch of groups. So I feel like I'm very much on top of it. And I'm the lawyer in the group for them. Actually, if the task force comes up with a recommendation and presents it to the commission, if they endorse it, support it, or they can change it however they want to, then they would send it to OPD. If OPD and the commission agree, then there's no need for it to go to city council. It only goes to city council in the event that there's a disagreement. I would assume that OPD would follow the process indicated by the lieutenant, but it would also include sending a copy over to OPOA and to see if they're going to demand any meet and confer issues for OPD to be able to agree on their side. Once they've reached agreement or had to fight with OPOA, then it would come back, and if OPOA then creates a disagreement between the commission and the police department by meet and confer, arbitration, or whatever, then the matter would have to go to city council to resolve that disagreement. Is that clear?
Can I build on that? We'd really only go to meet and confer if there's training that will be changed. Aside from that, I think we would all prefer not to meet and confer. It just makes it so much easier.
Absolutely. I mean, as long as this remains a statement of philosophy and does not affect working conditions, then you're home free.
But, meet and confer, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, particularly Lieutenant Febble, but OPOA has a wide definition of meet and confer and how it applies. So what I'm just saying is that exactly everything that Mike brought up is that, if we could all be aware of that, and particularly if Lieutenant Febble can alert us on, what OPOA might have an objection or might raise, so that we prevent these obstacles from coming up at the end. I'd rather have them and meet them head on as during the process, you know, because obviously just now in this discussion, there's, you know, there's different, we don't know what the process is. You know, Mike just laid it out very clearly, but even though that process exists, you know, the OPOA has, they have a history of bringing up even when it doesn't apply, meaning confer. Thank you, Mike, for that.
Yeah, Brenda.
I was I was going to say that we just went through where we've gone through a number of policy changes, the use of force policy, the militarized equipment policy, other things. So that policies come up, and they do need, we try to get buy-in with through OPD. And sometimes we've had to go to sort of a meet and confer process. Sometimes it's just disagreement as to whether a meet and confer is even required, because it may not, an argument that it may not relate to terms and conditions of employment. But but it's not a direct line from the police commission to the city council. There is going to have to be involvement of OPD, and they do get an opportunity to weigh in. They've sometimes suggested changes. It was amazing. I think Jose, for our lab, what was that, the use of force policy that we just accepted at Thursday's meeting. There were very few changes made. OPD did recommend some changes to the language, not as many as we thought, but it was a process. It took some time, but OPD will get an opportunity to weigh in on the final wording and make suggestions, which may be acceptable to everybody. So
That's my hope. So any other reaction? I really oversimplified the flow. So thank you, Mike and Brenda. So at this point, what do we think would be our immediate next steps at this point in time? Do we want to begin to discuss? And there's a question: is everybody comfortable with the idea that Creighton verbalized around a high-level definition of community policing with a listing of objectives that then guide our development of specific language, or at least concepts? Is everybody pretty comfortable with that?
Commissioner, what I was sharing, and I'll share again, is we early on, perhaps 2-3 meetings ago, we shared a Creighton did it, a new definition for community policing, and you guys had an opportunity to weigh in. So let me remind you of what that looked like. Nope, sorry, wrong one. I think it's this one. And I can send that to you. This was at the top here is Creighton's suggested language. And then a few folks that did have the opportunity to weigh in. All to say that we've started. I don't know that we need to look at line by line right now. I can resend this out to the group, certainly, in terms of definition. I wonder if it's helpful then, if we can nail down rules of engagement. I think that's where Mariana was going. And I wonder then, rather than actually dive into language today, because I'm not sure if people are ready, talk about a structure so that I can put something down on paper, and now we're following a roadmap. Because I feel as though, and certainly that, it would be good to start really understanding what section. So maybe we just go section by section as we continue with these Saturday meetings. So that does mean that folks will come in prepared, we'll do our homework. So we can talk about what that looks like. And then I'd love to talk about public engagement, or at least have you guys talk about public engagement. There are no members of the audience joining us anymore. We have had no one fill in the survey. We've had, and so I would really value the chance to hear from this group how you want to do that, unless you guys are okay with that it's this group, like not to worry about that just yet, to focus our efforts with this group, and then think about a broader promotional campaign. So I don't know. I'm wondering personally, I'm still hungry for logistics myself, just to help you guys facilitate and build out some roads for you.
Thank you, Rania. So in terms of the definition of community policing, yeah, we did go over this document that Rania just put up on the screen. But it seems as though we're comfortable with the idea of proceeding forward with a statement of what we think that the community policing consists of, and specifically within that statement, what are the objectives we want to see community policing accomplish. So what do we want to at this point put that as part of our homework for 2 weeks from now, going over that and refining it in the way that we think it should be, the ultimate product should be, while we go back and look at the 15-01 as we see it right now, section by section. So we can put that on a parking lot and go back and look at the actual document section by section. Brenda, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we go to 1501 and put in either in the background or purpose. Let's put the first paragraph into draft 1501 now, and let's wordsmith that so that whatever is the first thing we want to say, and perhaps it's in the background section. Maybe let's do redlining of the draft now and see what it would read like, and let's try to agree upon that section, which is basically the definition of whatever we agree is the definition of community policing or community oriented or whatever we want to do. Let's see if we can get a first paragraph now, and that may be and then I think it'll feel like we've made some progress in terms of actually revising this document. Right? Is the first paragraph in this now? This no one has made any changes, any red lines, changes to background, right? This is the same language that Lieutenant Joshi recommended in OPD's draft of this, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So how about we decide, why don't we work on this first paragraph, and let's see how we want the opening to be.
Okay. Mike, do you have your hand up? You're muted, Mike.
Sorry about that. I agree with the process that Creighton described of definition and objectives. You know, I think that that's kind of what, you know, all modern programming is all about, is what are the objectives we're trying to accomplish based on the definition that we come up. I also agree with Brenda that we do have time today, and I don't see why we couldn't go ahead and begin addressing that first paragraph at least. I would say in response to something Rania said, I think that, you know, we've made this open. I know the commission has been dealing with some problems about the openness of ad hoc committees, but I think this ad hoc task force has made itself open and available, and open invitations, anybody can come. I think the real community participation is going to be at the police commission. I mean, we are essentially a working group that's been assigned to do a task on behalf of the commission and then submit it to the commission. The commission will then vet it to the public, as they vet everything to the public. So I'm not that concerned that we, you know, go out and publicize what we're doing as a task force, because we're simply the worker bees in this. I'm done.
Thank you, Mike. So what are people's thoughts about this first paragraph that is under background? Are there any modifications that we think are appropriate to the wording as it sits right now?
And my other question is, where is the language that Rania first showed, the first document, the other document? And, should we be cutting and copying and pasting that language into the first paragraph? Or some of it?
I'm happy to resend this form so that everyone on this panel has it, and also, if that's the case, make it available to the public so that they can read it. I do worry a little about actually getting into language and cutting and pasting. As you guys can see from the form itself, this group hasn't agreed on a definition. So do we take this form first? And Commissioner Dorado and Mariano has his hand up. But I will send this now as well.
Okay, sounds good. Mariano.
Yeah, and I just want to apologize for talking too much, but sorry. So I agree with working on something, but as Rania just said, we haven't really agreed on anything, and doing it here, it's for this one paragraph on background, I think is doable. But I would much rather have, this document broken up into maybe 3 sections. And the first section, we take it, all of us, and this is in a Google format, I believe. And our homework is to go ahead and look at that and put in our red lines, our changes, and compare, and using Creighton's proposed language, which I really like, and all of us work on that online or through the Google. And then when we come back on in 2 weeks, we go through that and agree on it or not, and then do the wordsmithing there. And then our homework for the next 2 weeks is the next section. And so, that way in 3 meetings, we could have the 1501 done in a more mindful and intentional way. And then I do worry about community engagement. If no one is, participating right now, I think community engagement needs outreach and publicity to get them. My neighbors always ask me what's happening with the police commission. Now they're asking me what's happening with the ad hoc. And as I'm reporting to them, some of the best ideas that might come out of my mouth are because of what I take from them. So that kind of input is so important. I'd like to get some feedback on any surveys that have been filled out from the website, and see what those residents, or even who's looking at the website. So I do worry about that, and how can we get it out there? And it's just as much our responsibility to get it out there as to have people join us. So my main suggestion is that, we break it down, if we want to go into that one paragraph, I believe that we can do it today, but I think that if we break it down in 3 sections, we all do our homework and we all participate in it through the Google Doc, and then we finalize that at the following meeting. Thank you.
Mariano, did you have did you have an idea of what the 3 sections of the document would consist of?
Well, not really. I think there's 14 pages. I'm old school. I printed it out. And I mean, so if we just, I mean, I can give you, if you give me, go on with the conversation, and I can give you some suggestions, but we can simply, so the first section, I would say, we go and finish at neighborhood services coordinators. That would be the first section. And then the second section. So
actually, I wonder, rather than do this, so here's the thing. We all discussed blowing this up and kind of starting from scratch. Let's not look at what exists. Why don't you guys just start telling me the sections that you want to include? I'll write them and then I'll write them up and we'll share them. And we'll start there. We'll start on the sections. And that way, if I can create a working document, we can grab language that you like. You can look at models that you like. So here's what I heard already. Context and definition, that's the starting section, right? Okay. And please, let's also look at the models. And the only reason I say that, and commissioners, obviously with your permission, but we're still looking, or we're still limiting ourselves to a document that already exists. And I think everyone here is saying like, hey, we've got an opportunity to kind of like stretch a little bit. I even heard the lieutenant say like, welcome a stretch. Let's see how far we can stretch. I want to share with you, did anyone get a chance to see the model policies? And is there one that you liked more than the other that I can show? Commissioner Shea, you liked one. Which one do you want to show? What would you show right now?
The SFPD.
Got it. Right. Okay. Let's look at that as just as a Mariana's. Let's stay with that though, because I think understanding the sections that you like and then being able to fill it in. So let me share this. Does that help? Because otherwise I think we're limiting ourselves to what already exists, and you don't have to do that.
And as we look, I think that we are going to be limited in terms of at least the outline. If I understand Lieutenant Fable, the policies sort of follow a particular format. And if we are going, and this will be OPD's policy, and if there is a template, we need to follow that template. What the language is under those templates could certainly be different, as they are with every policy. So that was one of the reasons I was suggesting, we're going to have to follow this template. And what we do, and we can pull from Seattle's policy and Chicago's policy and San Francisco's policy and keep Oakland's policy, draft policy, in terms of plugging in language. So that was my point in terms of,
yeah.
I think the concepts are good. I mean, we have some good model policies, and there are some things we can pull out and just plug in to our desired policy.
But I think yes, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that I would still encourage big thinking and concepts, and then then we can, it's so much easier to take a big into small template than it is to have big ideas in small template.
Right.
And Commissioner Shea has his hand up.
So, in thinking about what everyone's saying and trying to go at a higher level, as well as start thinking about breaking up this document, it makes sense to me that we think about this, what goes into a policy like this. For one, we start off with, as we can see in most of these policies, some sort of background, mission statement, values that are built into community policing, or expectations of the community, as well as definitions. That could be one large section, one smaller section. Certainly with this particular policy, we have to have a focus on what the roles of the staff members at OPD would be. So the CROs, the CRTs, not necessarily the NSCs, but maybe some statement about how those CROs or NSCs might work together. So roles and responsibilities, and that's probably a pretty large section. And then perhaps like some workflow. Like in some of these policies, there is workflow. There is how a community resource officer, or whatever version of it is in Chicago, in San Francisco, or in Seattle, what they are expected to do. What meetings are they expected to be at? What things, how the department may support them in order to do those things, and what recognition they might get, which goes a little bit outside of roles and responsibilities and more about sort of how they fit into the broader scheme of either community policing or the department. Finally, I really liked one section. I can't remember if it was Seattle or San Francisco. There was a very explicit incentive structure, and I know that's something that we've talked about here in this ad hoc as another type of broad strokes section that we might think about putting into it. So I think that's maybe 4 or 5 descriptions or suggestions as to larger sections that we want to think about or take on or tackle. Just thinking and looking at these things, or just listening to everybody here. And then as we're doing that, Lieutenant Fable can tell us, well, how is this going to fit into whatever template or format that you need in order to make it so you don't chop everything up and put it in a way that isn't quite what we were thinking of. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Jesse. Any other hands up? I don't have everybody, I don't have a gallery right now. Anybody else have any comments?
I want to add too that I did, maybe it was Chicago's, or I'm not sure, but there was one about sort of like a youth council or something in one of the model policies. I really like to get our youth involved in any community policing policy. That is to give a role to our young people in Oakland who have some wonderful ideas about how they can and should or would actually interact with the police department more. And there's some creative programs around the country, unusual things, and some Oakland is doing some of those things now. Sometimes like with the Know Your Rights things that the Charles Houston Bar Association is doing, that I believe OPD was involved with, where you're telling young people what their rights are and how to interact with the police on the street, those kinds of things. I know when we were interviewing with for the new chief, some of the candidates talked about programs in their jurisdictions, when maybe been pizza with a cop or something like that, or something with a cop where they actually went out and they met as a group and they sort of exchanged stories. And the youth got a chance to see the police perspective. The police got a chance to see that not everybody that they encounter out in the community is a thug. And that helped in terms of understanding and would certainly help in terms of community empowerment. So I think too that we plug in somewhere some concepts such as that. I'm not sure where it would go, but we can put it in terms of have OPD establish maybe a youth council or something like that. Okay.
Thank you, Brenda. Any other comments?
Yeah, one last one, Mr. Dorado. So I really do like Mariano's idea of breaking it up into sections. And I also really like the idea of looking at other premier agencies, community policing policies, and everybody's really talking great ideas. And the one thing that was brought up though is like on the first background, there were several ideas placed out there, but there wasn't a consensus and agreement. And I'm wondering if with all of these ideas we just talked about in the last 10 minutes, if we took Mariano's idea and we broke it up into sections, and then we had a week of homework to look at all of the relevant information within that section, and then each of us rewrites that section in the way that we feel is most appropriate. And then the next meeting, we combine all of our ideas, talk about, discuss them, refine it, and then the following meeting, conclude that portion of the policy. I think we could work our way through this in a very seamless and methodical manner. What are your thoughts on that, everyone? Rania?
So thanks very much, Lieutenant Fable. I think that's a good idea. The concern that I have is if I'm revising the policy, if Wilson's revising the policy, if Mike's revising the policy, and we all have different entry points, then we're going to have fundamentally different, outcomes, and then we're going to be discussing, foundational issues because we haven't settled on the foundational issues yet. So I'm concerned that if we just start diving into revisions, we're coming at it from so many different angles without a consensus. And then we're going to have to backtrack and say, okay, well, what do we actually mean by this? Or what is X, Y, Z? And I hate to shake up the boat right here on this question right now, but we've talked a little bit about CROs, and obviously CROs are an integral part of the community policing policy. But the reality of CROs are they get pulled off to engage in traditional law enforcement functions. So the question is, should we? I know that CROs are mandated through Measure Z, and there's funding that goes to them. But even taking a step back, does this policy, should it be broader and encompass the entire department rather than just certain roles? And just that basic question. I don't know if we've settled on that.
I will say, Creighton, I think we definitely all have agreed as a group that if I'm understanding your point correctly, the CRO should be really in the back of this policy, right? The police officer, in terms of however we go forward, should be one of the last options in this involvement. But I do recall, like Mr. DeVries, we had this discussion briefly last meeting, and Joe had brought up something about an alternative policy. Very smart man, talking way over my head. But yeah, and you bring up a great point. There's going to be a lot of different competing philosophies. I think if we can overcome that hurdle, I think that we could progress quickly and efficiently. Not that quickly is important, but I think that we could certainly progress with a quality product in an efficient manner. It's challenging, I agree.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're obviously going to take it in sequence of what we see right now, meaning that whatever our breakup is that we decide on, we're going to start with what is the foundation, and that is the background, the purpose, the vision, mission, and goals. So I think if we hammer that out as the first section, we'll have the foundation, if I'm understanding you right, Creighton, to continue on with the other 2 or 3 sections, whatever we decide to tackle them. So if that's the case, then my suggestion as to the sections is that we use that as the first section. That is the page 1, and that we go from there on the second section into page 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are pretty much gone with the NSCs, and we hammer out what it is that we want the CROs in terms of problem solving to do. And so again, I'm talking about section 1 being page 1, section 2 being page 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the third section would be the actual general role of community officers as it is right now, section 6, community resource officers, general role. That's where I think the real heart of this is going to be, is hammering out what we want the CROs to do. So that third section can be that page. I guess it's page the pages aren't right on here, but it's I think page 6. Anyhow, it starts from section 6, community resource officers, general role A. So I think that's 6, and then 7. And the rest of it, starting with section 7, foot patrol officers, I think those are really relatively minor, but I would say let's use that as the end of the policy, section 4. So again, section 1, I would suggest page 1, section 2 be 2, 3, 4, 5, and the section 3 being the actual definition of what the role of the community resource officers are as section 3. So that'll be 6 and 7 and piece of 8. And then from there on back, I see that as being relatively minor issues. Foot patrol officers, crime reduction team officers, I think we could probably just throw those out.
Commissioner Geraldo, Commissioner
Commissioner
Schmidt, hand up.
Could so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no worries. Let me see if I can synthesize what's been going on for the last maybe 5-10 minutes or so. It sounds like there's a consensus that we need to take this policy section by section, but there's also, it needs to be against the backdrop of a shared values that we think may need a little bit more concreteness, although I would argue that actually we don't. I think over the last 4 or 5 meetings, I think we've come to a consensus of what those shared values are, which is a sense of community empowerment, community first, that the police are there to serve the community, but are the last resort in most instances, because we want them to deal with the most serious issue and not have the police respond to things that may be quality of life or things that don't necessarily need, as the chair very aptly says, a badge and a gun. But still be very involved in this, in the process of identifying particular projects or things to move forward with. I think that is in and of itself a very strong set of values that we can work forward from, and probably take on this first section of background, context, and mission and values, potentially even definitions, so that we can sort of, and take that subset, because that is the foundation of any policy, and inserting those values into that first section, and then moving through the rest of the document in line with those values. So I think if we do sort of work with that first section with those values that we have, I think we get to Creighton's concern of sort of making sure that we're coming from the right place, and we are all on the same page of how we're going through and where we're coming from. The nitty gritty might get a little bit contentious about what NSCs handle and CROs handle, and sort of the micro or granular level. But if we start off with that, the background, context, and the values that we all share, I think that's a good way to move forward. It's a nice piece that we can just chew off of or bite in these 2-week periods, maybe even a little bit more. And then maybe if that's okay as a good way to start, then we might spend the next 19 minutes talking about how we're going to get this out to people.
Okay, does that, go ahead, Brenda.
You're on mute.
You're
I
muted.
think that's perfect. I was gonna go back to Jose's. I'm not sure I understood what sections, and you were referring to Jose to pages. I think it would be better if you refer to sections.
Okay,
So what would be the start of section 2? It would be paragraph, I'm sorry, yeah. What Roman numeral?
Roman numeral 4.
That's gonna start section 2,
That's
and
correct.
it would go to where? Is that all of Roman numeral 4 would be your section 2?
No, there would also be 5, but most of that's gone because it refers to the NSCs.
Right. But
So
it's nonetheless sections 4 and 5.
Correct.
Commissioners,
Okay,
I'm so sorry. Didn't we just agree that we were going to have new sections and not follow? I mean, I've tracked it in the chat that it's going to go back, that we're going to try and play backgrounds, context, roles of staff, workflow, and then programs as a starting point. Or did you, I just want to make sure that I'm tracking, because I thought we discussed the model policies and that we were going to try and play to sections that we wanted to see, and then we were going to put it in OPD language. So let's just make sure that, okay.
what I'm trying to do is get what Jose said.
No, absolutely.
We have the first part of our job. The second part of section 2, I understood Jose to say would encompass what's currently in Roman numeral 4 and Roman numeral 5. And then phase 3 or section 3 would encompass what's in Roman numeral 6 and what else?
And that would run
It-
yeah, so it'd be 6.
Okay, so all of Roman numeral 6,
That's correct.
and then Roman numeral 7 and the rest of that would kind of be our 4th section that we would kind of address. Or
That's
something
correct.
like that. Okay,
That's correct.
and that's all I was trying to clarify, Aranya.
No, thank you so much, Commissioner. That was actually aimed at Commissioner Dorado because he took us back to the document, but I see now we're tracking document with the new sections. Got it.
Yes.
So, and
Okay.
then to something that, Creighton, you mentioned, if this is helpful. So here's how this starts, and it is going to get a little controversial, a little messy, but I like where Lieutenant Fable is going. And if I can get this committee's agreement, I'm going to take what we just said. It's also what I've been tapping out, put it into a spreadsheet. Everyone's going to have a column. You get to play in the sections either on the homework weeks that we've agreed, or you can go all out and fill it in. And then the debate where we take the 90 minutes every Saturday is debating that, Creighton, you think it should be X, Wilson thinks it should be Y. The final decision, and this is just a suggestion for you guys, the final decision falls with the 3 commissioners that run this ad hoc, right? And so Lieutenant Fable, we're looking for you not only for your input, but to keep us honest as to OPD can or can't. If you can't, tell us why. We'll try and remedy it with the OPD, or we'll stop short if it's legal or whatever. But at least then we start to shape the document the way that this committee wants to see it shaped. So it's work. And that spreadsheet is going to be burdensome, but I think we can, let's at least try it. This is the closest we've gotten to like putting pins in the ground. So I'm really excited. I think to point about the public, always know that Conveyor is up, the survey's up. I don't know that you want to make this live document live just because I've got 10 of you or however many are on here right now to track. But we can certainly PDF copies after every meeting and make sure that they're put up. Is that helpful?
Yes, and we don't want to make it live. It should just be us for now. So yeah, I think any confusion, we're going to take it in these sections. Obviously, we're going to focus on the first one first, and go from there. If in fact we individually figure out what we want to see on the first section, certainly we can go to the second. But we'll be able to do everything on the Google Doc, so everybody will be able to see what everybody's thoughts are. Mike, you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm glad that, see, I really feel much more optimistic and much more organized by what we're doing today. There's one issue that's very important to me that I think has to be a core part of community policing, and that's officer tenure. I believe currently the officers serve for 2 years and then they rotate. And just based on my experience with OPD growing up in Oakland, we had the same beat officer. I mean, me, my brother and sisters, and they're 12 and 14 years younger than me. We all knew the same beat officer. Not saying we're going to get back to that length of term, but I believe a 2-year term is really much too short to give them a chance to know the neighborhood, get the trust of the neighborhood, and then be moved on to someplace else. So I just wanted to make sure that that's part of our discussion at some point.
Yeah, I had edited to 5. Brenda?
Yes, thank you. I was going to clarify. I thought we were right now just working on the first part of the policy and not the other segments of it, correct?
Yes, that's
So,
correct.
okay, and the other thing is this. Do we all really need to try to write a policy, or can we have a working group propose language and come back for us to look at, edit, and add our 2 cents worth? Rather than coming back with 6 drafts or 5 drafts or whatever, can we get a writing group And I'm not volunteering to be that right now. But can we get a writing group, maybe three people, four, to come in? I think Creighton would probably volunteer. But just some, to kind of say, okay, let the three of us get together. Let's propose some language to take back to the larger group, and then the rest of us who are not in the writing group can just sort of make some notes about, what, I think I'd like, if they don't come back with this policy or this concept, I think I'd ask them to do it. But who knows, the writing group may come up with some perfect language rather than us trying to synthesize 5 or 6 different versions. The concepts may be there. One version may have it may be sentence number 2. Somebody else may have it as sentence number 5. But if it's all there, we could work off of a proposed draft. And that was my suggestion. Let's get a writing group. Or do we have the option of not trying to draft something? All of us don't have to go in and draft and make a proposed language, right? And if we don't, then the writing group will write it, will form itself. Because I probably will wait to see what other people propose, quite frankly.
Mariano and Jesse. Thank you, Brenda.
Mhm.
I think Commissioner Harvin Forte just answered her own question. Let's just see how it works, because maybe we don't need a writing group. But so yeah, thank you for that thought process, Commissioner. Yeah, because I think maybe if for this first section on purpose, background, the big meaty part, let's all participate in it. See how that works. If I have way too much to say, I hope somebody tells me, listen, Mariano, you have way too much to say. And then, but I think that let's try it and see how that works, because I think, at least in this group, I think it's doable. And if it doesn't work, then, let's go with the suggestion Commissioner Harvin Forte had about the writing group. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariano. Jesse.
I'm good.
Okay.
They got it.
And as long as the chair doesn't say I didn't do my homework, if I don't have a contribution, I'm good.
I mean, what I think makes the most sense is that we all definitely think about what we want in the document. There are some of us who maybe will be talking too much or writing too much, who are going to put a lot more into what the actual language will be. But certainly everyone has an idea of what they absolutely want in there, and then we'll have the discussion about it, right? So figure it out.
All right. Sound like we've come to a consensus. Lieutenant Febble, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, everybody, for a great discussion today. I'm looking forward to our next meeting.
Great. If then we've come to a consensus, we're all got our homework on section 1. Do we want to take the next 10 minutes or so to talk about the outreach? What are people's feelings about or thoughts about how we can get, for example, the survey out to more people? We only had one response to the survey. So certainly we can do better than that. Jesse, do you have something you said? Your hand up.
Yeah, so I think it would be more helpful for me as I think about how we're going to do this outreach, about groups, populations, or organizations or areas that we want to focus on. And then I think that will help us sort of get into who or what, where we go. Just off the top of my head, as Commissioner Harvin Forte said, I'm very interested in youth being taking part. There are a lot of great youth organizations in Oakland. I think that perhaps NSCs should get involved, neighborhood councils, neighborhood organizations, associations, things like that. And so identifying those groups or like groups of people that we would want to have input might help inform where we go, who we talk to, et cetera.
Great. Mike, I'm sorry, Mariano, I think you were next.
Yes. So let's not make this too difficult. We have 7 or actually 8 city council members, and they all have newsletters. They all have some kind of buy-in into this. Besides having the newsletters, they also have election precinct information, which takes you directly to neighborhoods and precincts and tells you how many Latinos, how many Spanish speakers, how many Cantonese. I mean, that's demographic information that is valuable. So we tap into them immediately. I don't see any one city council person saying no to this. And we can give them the proposed language and the survey. The other thing is, we have also 7 school board directors, so that we're tapping into not only youth, but we're tapping into parents, everyday parents. Within that, the directors, there's also all city council youth students who are involved in the OUSD directors, board of directors. There's also the mayor's newsletter. So we can also use the mayor's newsletter. Let's see, but so within that, those who receive the newsletter, those are engaged residents because somehow they've requested to be part of the newsletter. But then there's the not so much engaged. So that's who I'm particularly concerned with. And that's where that precinct demographic information becomes really important. And that's where we might have a little more difficult time getting that information from the city council people. But there's also a very key data program. It's called PDI, Political Data Incorporated. It used to be the old where you used to get the precinct breakdowns and told you all that information. Now you can pay for that, so that might cost a little bit of money. But if we can get it from the city council people, I'd love to do that. So those are my quick ideas. There's also merchant lists and stuff, but stuff that we can do like within this coming week. We can just hit up the city council folks, and I would volunteer to take a lead on that if people give me that permission. Thank you.
What we may want to do, and I'm just throwing this out, is there's what 9 of us putting Rania and Lieutenant aside. There's 7. We could each of us take a school district, a council district, and take responsibility to get in touch with not just the council member but the school board member. And we could just, I could take 5, Mariano could take 4, whatever. But if we take responsibility for each of those council members and school board members to get this, do this outreach of specifically our survey, then I think in an organized manner we can do that. In addition to what other networks we have. For example, Mariano and I are members of the Latino Task Force as well as the African American Latino Action Alliance. So we just hit our own networks in addition to the council districts that we volunteer to take care of. So Mike, I don't know if you want to do it from Vallejo, but certainly if you're up for that, we can just sing out what council districts we want to take care of. As I said, I can do the easy one. I can do 5, and I'll get a hold of Noel Gallo and I think she's still the council member. ¿Cómo se llama? Oh, that's right. We got another one. Okay. Anyhow, whoever he is, I'll get in touch with him. If we want to go with that, let's sing out with what council members. Rania, you want to write down? I'll take 5.
I'll take 3.
Okay.
I'll take
Wilson,
4.
3. Mariano will take 4. Is that right?
I heard Mariano 3, Mike 4.
Okay.
I'll take one. Oh, Creighton had his hand up.
Creighton 7,
I'll take what's left, 1 and 6 or something.
1, 2,
I'll take anyone. Just assign me one, I'm fine.
Commissioner
Like
Shea.
whatever's left.
So how about Commissioner Harbin Forte 1, Commissioner Shea 2?
Okay,
There's-
Is there any more than
yeah,
Wilson?
There's citywide, and that's Kaplan, that's number 8.
Hang on. Oh, hang on. I've got. I'm missing someone for 6. Missing someone for 8.
so I got 2, I have 2,
You have 1.
1, okay.
I can double up, Rania.
Mariano. Okay.
I
What
can-
would
I can
you
double up.
for which one? 3
Let me
and
do Kaplan, citywide,
citywide. Okay.
Kaplan, that's 8.
Thank you.
So do
So
we
I
have
still need
everybody?
6. I still need 6.
I'll take 6.
I'll take 6, whatever.
Okay, why don't, Brenda, why don't you take 6 and I'll tack on the mayor to my 5.
Okay, so I got districts 1 and 6.
Yeah, okay.
And it's the city council members and the school board.
That's correct.
Okay,
And I'll take 5 and the mayor.
Yeah.
Everybody else
Okay.
got, we got a full list now?
Commissioner Harbin Forte 1 and 6. Commissioner Shea 2. Mariano 3 and 8. Mike 4. Commissioner Dorado 5 and the mayor's office.
Okay, so everybody got their assignments? Okay, great. Right at-
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
specifically, we are going to ask, we're going to tell them about the survey. We're going to ask them to promote the survey among their constituents and to make sure that they go online, have people go on the commission website and complete the survey. What will we do about language access, if anything?
That's a really good question. What I will do specifically in 5 is let the council members know that there are resources for anybody who speaks Spanish and I'll check on, I know I can cover the Spanish, but I'll check on Cantonese and any other languages. So that's an important question that we need to keep in mind. So what I will do is I will ask Noel specifically what kind of resources, as well as the District 5 school board member, because they're really good about language access. So I'm going to ask the both of them in this context of what we're asking, what kind of resources they can afford us, and then pass that on to the group.
Okay,
That's a good question. Thank you, Brenda.
Would it help if we draft language for you all to send in an email that the city council and school board can just plug into their newsletter? Yeah, okay, I'll work on
Yeah.
that.
Isn't there already some language that went in before the survey that Jose and I came up with? But maybe you can, if not, yeah, because that's really important. And also,
I'll take a look at that too, yeah.
Rania, I filled out the survey and I don't have access to it anymore because I wanted to translate it into Spanish. How do I, because I know the wording changed, some of the question, the way they were formatted. How do I you know what, maybe I can have one of my daughters go to it and I'll copy that. No, never mind, I got it.
Oh, let me send it to you because I think you're all going to need it at some point. Unfortunately, like the limitations of, so I'm using a shared Google form, which I think is okay. Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll find a way
Okay.
to either PDF it
Okay.
or send it.
And then I'll translate it to Spanish and then maybe we can send that out to any city council folks that request it in Spanish. Just all you folks, just ask me and I'll you know what, I'll send it to everyone.
One other question is if Mariano translates it, can we put the Spanish version on the website at least? No, yes, that would be a good way. And if we had somebody who speaks Cantonese or anything else who could translate it, but at least we could have the English version and the Spanish version on the website as soon as we can. Okay.
So Mariana, you'll take care of doing the translation and getting it to Rania?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Or send it, I'll send it to everyone here,
Okay.
so that, you know, if the city council folks request it, you can just have it.
Yeah, better yet. Jesse,
Move to
yeah,
adjourn.
I just saw your hand up. Okay, so.
I left it up, sorry.
Okay, so.
Actually, hold on, just logistically, I don't, it has to go onto the website, so I'll send it to Rania, and then Rania will embed it in there, because otherwise, yeah, so that's better. I will send it to Rania, and then she can embed it in the website. Sorry,
Okay.
Rania, to give you more work.
So it sounds like we've got our plates full. And what I've got in my notes is that we're going to focus in on page 1, and each one of us rewrite that via the Google Doc, so we all take a look at what everybody's thoughts are. And then we're going to, in terms of the outreach, we each have our assignments of what council district we're going to focus on to get the reference to our survey on our website. Mariano's going to get to Rania a translated version, and we'll see if we can find a resource to do the Cantonese version. Hopefully we can do that too, and just send it to Rania to put up. Have I missed anything? Okay, great.
Yes, I'm sorry. Commissioner Shea is going to draft a blurb for us to send to use as we contact our city council members and school board representatives.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
I am going to try and
Okay.
put together a spreadsheet so that everyone has one repository to capture your notes. I'm going to try it. I see Wilson shaking his head. Let's see if we can make it work.
Yeah, and we of course also have a big Vietnamese speaking community don't we, in Oakland?
Yes.
So there are a number of languages, if we can try to get something. I've never tried anything on like the online translations and stuff. I don't know how accurate they are, but maybe I'll try to.
Sorry to interrupt you, Commissioner. I wonder if I can take this up with you guys in our
Oh, yes.
because we might be able to request. We have a budget. I don't know if I can,
Okay.
like I
Okay.
would need some help from you guys to understand. I did put in, this is not the first time, Mariano, I am acknowledging this is not the first time you've asked me about language access. I did put in a request from the city to find out how much it costs to get done through the city. It's been a little chaotic in the city system, but I will follow up.
Yeah.
But just for expediency, I think I'm hearing folks say that they will try and translate it themselves
Okay.
I
in the
didn't know
languages
there
that
was
we
a
do.
cost.
Sorry,
I didn't know there was a cost.
through the city, yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to America.
Yeah,
You
Mariano.
don't, if it's free, you don't want it.
All righty. Any other topics we need to touch on before we adjourn? If not,
I'm going to say
As
one
always-
final thing.
go ahead.
I would say this was a very, very good meeting to everybody. I think that this is one of our most productive meetings ever. So I just want to thank you and thank everybody else too. It's great.
Yeah, I think we really kicked open the door to getting to where we want to go. So yeah, thanks to everybody, including the Senate, for taking this time. We really appreciate, the commissioners we volunteered for this, but for those community members, as always, we really appreciate you and your thoughts and your time and your energy and your passion. because this is really going to impact, we believe, Oakland in a really significant and positive way. So again, we really appreciate your time. So with that, if there's not any other thoughts, buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon to everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Buenas
You all take-
tardes.
You all take care.
Hasta luego.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Hasta luego.
Okay.